Hello,
Hi, Gail.
how's things?
They're okay. My computer's incredibly slow lately. Yesterday and
Oh,
today, just so slow.
oh
So
boy.
I'll keep letting people in here for a few
Okay.
minutes. Um,
Is Patty out there yet? I spoke with her this morning.
is Patty coming in, you mean, to the
Yeah,
meeting?
from
No,
Suburban Access.
nope, not
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
So I'll keep letting people in. It's
Okay.
already recording, so we have the recording
Okay.
going.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Beeps all the time. Beeps. Yeah. Randomly. You see, like get a little thing for all the people, but you know what? I'll need to see.
Oh, hey, Cal.
Yeah, I'm like, how do I get all my people up here?
Yeah, kind of thought you were just
So,
talking to yourself, Gail.
yeah,
So
that happens too.
yeah, yeah. Okay, Sarah's coming in. Fireflies, I think that's just the AI note taker, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Hey, Sarah. Everything good? You can hear
Hey,
okay?
yeah, looks good. Is
Okay.
Patty here yet?
I
No,
did not
Still
see
waiting on
her.
her?
No.
not yet. Still waiting, and hopefully we're gonna have a few more people join us.
Yeah.
Um, I'm already recording just because I didn't want to miss anything, but it's probably a little early. I might pause. I might pause that so that there's Patty. And we are recording, so go right ahead.
So, okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so grateful to be able to keep informing families and staff about transition and how it works and all the services out there and how they function. So we are so grateful today to have Patty O'Brien with us from Suburban Access. She is the program manager there. She has been there, Patty, like 15 years,
Yeah, I was here.
something
I've
like
been
that.
here for a little over 15 years. Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. So she
Okay.
is a wealth of knowledge. We are so lucky today to have you here, Patty.
Thank you.
You've spent your entire career in intellectual and developmental disability because you
Yeah.
this is your
25
career.
years before this at a provider agency and then 15
Yeah,
years here. So I
amazing.
obviously started when I was very, very young. So
So we're so grateful to have you here today. If you would just start by just kind of giving us a general overview, where suburban access kind of fits in all the chain of things that happen when families try to get services, try to understand state benefits, Medicaid, all these things, it's just very complex and
there's a lot. Yeah.
give us an
So
overview.
the kind of short version of that, and then I'll answer any questions that people have. Suburban Access is an independent service coordination agency. So we're a private not-for-profit and we contract with the state, the Division of Developmental Disabilities under the DHS umbrella. We're responsible for the south and west suburbs of Cook County, which is a big service area. And then there's agencies like ours throughout the state responsible for particular geographic areas. So the ones closest to us would be like CSO, who does the south side of Chicago, and Service Inc., who has a number of areas, but the one closest to us, Will, Grundy, Kankakee counties, CAU, the north side of Chicago. And we all do the same things. Um, one of the first things that we do, and a lot of people call us a pass agency, pre-admission screening, but that's really one of our functions. So one of the things that we do is enroll people on the statewide waiting list, which is also called the PUNS. I think it's a silly name. I think it confuses people. It's just a waiting list. There's a lot of I think misunderstanding about what PUNS is. PUNS is nothing but a waiting list. So in order to receive services in the state, people have to be in a crisis. or selected from the PUNS from the waiting list. What the state has tried to do over the last 14 years now, since the Liggett lawsuit was settled in 2011 and the consent decree was in effect, is every year since 2012, every fiscal year, they have selected a number of people off the PUNS database, off of the waiting list, statewide, usually around 1,500 people. It varies, but it's anywhere between like 12 and 1,800 people that they have selected. Most of the people who have been selected have been waiting between 4 and 5 years. So it is a really long time. It's a long waiting list. Um, and the purpose of the whole Liggett consent decree and the selecting is that part of the lawsuit was that there weren't services available for people, and people were sort of languishing either in institutions or at home, and picking people off of the list prior to them being in crisis has really helped. It's helped people get services. It's helped kids transition out of school. So right now, if someone's enrolled in PUNS in the seeking category, and for those of you, I think families who are on here who may have had their child enrolled long before they made the changes, there used to be several different categories in PUNS. And what they've done now is they've streamlined it, and this is about 5 or so years ago, to you're either planning for services or you're seeking services. So people should be in seeking when they turn 18, so that hopefully they're selected 4 to 5 years from there, and there's somewhat of a smooth transition from school to some type of adult service, whether it's home-based services, residential services, a day program. So it's real important for the families who are on here, if their child's not enrolled, your son or your daughter, your sister, brother, whoever it is that you're responsible for, that you do get enrolled. And if you're not someone who lives in our service area, because I know that there's kids who go to Elim who do not all live in the south suburbs of Cook County, then you would call whatever the appropriate agency is, the ISC agency, to get enrolled. In order to get the services, then the services are funded through Medicaid. So Gail brought up Medicaid earlier. It's real important as you get close to the time that you're going to link with services that you're enrolled in Medicaid, because that's what funds it. For kids, under 19, under 19, at 19 and over, someone can apply for Medicaid on their own as an adult, where only their assets count. When you're 19 or when you're under 19, your family's income also counts. So a lot of the people that we work with are not eligible for Medicaid because of the family income. But if we can link them with the service, either because they're selected or in a crisis, then after the fact, we can get Medicaid waived so that they can get it to provide the service. So there's really no issue with Medicaid. Um, the problem is if you try to enroll in Medicaid and you're not clinically eligible or financially eligible, and you're not ready to get linked with services, then you'll absolutely be denied. But if you're denied and we're trying to get services for you and we're successful in linking you and getting that award letter, then we can get the Medicaid. So that's really important, I think, for people to understand. If anybody who's on this call has already received the letter I think it went out in December, saying that if the budget is funded, that the funds would be available in July for this new group of people who were selected off the PUNS. What you should be doing now is applying for Medicaid, gathering your clinical documents, because we still have to confirm clinical eligibility, getting an annual physical, getting things in order, and making some determinations about what you want to do. So that's sort of a nutshell. I don't know, Gail, if you wanted more information from that than that, or just to carry on from here with questions or whatever you want to do.
So, so does Suburban Access help families get like address Medicaid, get on Medicaid?
We will if they're having trouble. So
Okay.
a lot of people have no trouble whatsoever. They go right online and they do it. For some people, it's difficult, especially if you haven't you're not used to doing things online, or some of the questions can be a little tricky regarding what assets are or aren't. Also, if people do have money, we have a number of people who have trust funds, either through their families, or they might have their own trust fund. They might have a lot of money in the bank because they got part of grandpa's estate, or there was some kind of um, maybe a lawsuit that was settled and lots of money came in. So If people are denied, we can absolutely help them. It could be that they're not going to be eligible until they get the money for the individual into a trust, a special needs trust, which is very, very different than the trust a lot of people might have with their family. The family trust is not a special needs trust. So if you have an individual who does have special needs and who might want to utilize services through them that are paid for through Medicaid, whether it's through the developmental disabilities waiver or through doors, then you have to get that money tied up into what's considered to be a special needs trust. Or if Enable account might do the trick too. If it's, I believe the top line now for Enable account is $100,000. So, but we will absolutely assist families if they're having difficulty with Medicaid. Yeah, we have somebody who works with Medicaid and can help and answer those questions and look at the application and do all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so when a family first reaches out to Suburban Access, they do that to get on the PUNS list
Yes.
and kind of establish themselves with you. And um, what else? What else do? What else do they? What else do they see from you, or what else
Well, sometimes,
happens?
so people can call us to get on the PUNS, to get on the list. Or sometimes people are absolutely in a crisis and they call us. They
Mhm.
haven't been on the PUNS, they're just in a crisis. Somebody died, they've become homeless, there's some extreme behavioral difficulties. There's a number of reasons. We can start to look at services right away. Number one, if they meet what the state considers to be a crisis. So, what you and I might think of as a crisis in our families and with our kids is different than the way the state looks at a crisis. So, right now, the crisis criteria for the state is abuse, neglect, homelessness, and the death or incapacitation of a caregiver. So what we do with abuse and neglect, because we're not saying that people are abusing their kids or neglecting their kids. But what we're saying is when we present the case to the state under abuse or neglect, is we're saying that there's a potential that this individual could be abused or neglected if we're unable to get these services in. So we'll take example, somebody gets out of school at 22. They were not selected from the PUNS. They might not even be on the PUNS. They have a severe intellectual disability. They need 24-hour care and supervision. The mom, I'm using the mom because it's normally the mom. The mom has been going to work, maybe in a school, and has pretty much the same schedule, and it's worked out great. Well, now they would like their child to go off to some day program or do whatever, but they can't find one that meets their needs, or they don't have the funding right now, or the hours don't work out. There's a number of reasons. And now they find that they might have to quit their job so that they could stay home and take care of their child, but they're the sole breadwinner. And if they do, they really will become homeless because they're not going to pay their bills. Or if they go to work, this mom goes to work and leaves her child home alone, there's an absolute potential for abuse or neglect because he or she shouldn't be left alone. And we might be able to make a case under that. So we can go both routes with the crisis criteria or with somebody being selected. A lot of people call and they're not selected yet. They're not quite there. There's an email that people can send to see when they project that they'd be selected off the PUNS. But we get a lot of people who kind of fall in the middle. They don't really have a crisis that the state agrees with. Again, we might think it is, but they're not yet at that point where they're going to be selected. So we might try to give them some resources. Here's some information for respite, some mental health services. Here's how you can get some services, maybe for behavior services through your own private health insurance. If we might be able to link them with SST, which will do some short term. It's some short-term behavioral services in people's homes. So we would try to give people resources if we can't actually link them with services. Sometimes people go to DOORS, DRS, the Division of Rehab Services, for in-home service, which I don't really work with them, but what I've heard is that it's a little easier. It's not the crisis criteria. So sometimes people get DOORS. What DOORS doesn't provide is an ability to get a day program that's paid for, as the DD waiver does. So some families do go with DOORS, so they have a caretaker, and then they wait to get selected and might switch over to DD because then they can have both a PSW, a personal support worker, as well as the ability to attend a day program. But just so
Okay.
people know too, it's limited in what Doors operates on a DON score, a determination and need score, very similar to a nursing home. The higher that score, the higher allegedly the person's needs and the more funding that might be available. In DD, what happens in the children's home-based waiver, so I'm talking just home-based services now, so residential is different, but in children's home-based services, people have a pot of money available each month to build towards for certain services, and that pot of money is worth 2 times SSI. For adults, it's 3 times SSI, which just changed, and I believe I should have had that written down. I believe it's 979 right now. But so for children, it's about $2,000 a month. For adults, it's about $3,000 a month. That's available to build towards for services. So for personal support services, for behavior services, for a day program. And then the other thing that the waiver offers, which is separate from that monthly availability, that monthly pot of money, is $15,000 is available on a rolling 5-year basis to do some home and vehicle modification if it's new. So maybe convert, if somebody might have a bathtub, but they can't step over it anymore, they need a shower that they can walk into or roll into. They could do, we could help with that. The cost of things lately, a bathroom remodel is going to cost more than 15 grand, but if you could get $15,000 paid, towards something that might cost you $23,000, it could be a game changer, for your family member. Or a lift for a vehicle, a ramp for outside of your home. There's different things that we could apply for with that.
Okay, and that's all through doors.
No, that's through DD.
That's through
Doors,
the waiver
doors
system.
also, doors also has some home modification money available, although I don't know how much and how that works. Ours
Okay,
is
gotcha.
15,000 available. It's on a rolling calendar, so a rolling 5-year calendar. So let's say
Mhm.
you did something that cost $10,000 3 years ago, and now you're looking for something else. Well, right now you got $5,000 left because after 5 years, that 10 will drop off and you'd be back to the zero.
Okay.
But it's a really good thing for people. It's very, very beneficial to the families.
And that is if you're receiving the waiver money, correct?
Yes, you absolutely
Okay.
have to have it. You
Okay.
can't be on the waiting list. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What does DD
And
stand for?
developmental disabilities. There was a question, what does DD stand for?
Yeah,
Developmental
developmental disabilities. Yeah.
disability. Um, so are there any other like significant differences that you can talk about, or maybe just waivers and the different types of waivers, but differences between using waivers and using doors because you can't do both, correct?
Yeah. So they're both waivers. Doors has a waiver, DD has a waiver, but you cannot be in both. You have to be in one or the other. So a lot of kids might already be in the doors waiver, and then they might get selected from the PUNS because they're on the list. Then they have to make a decision. The family makes a decision, and there's no right answer. There's no this is better, that's better. It really is what's the situation, what's the individual situation, what's going on with the child or the adult that's getting the service, and which of these divisions, they're both two divisions under DHS, which would fit the bill, which provides a better service for that person. Some people who are very, very complex and have a lot of physical issues and medical issues might have a pretty high DON score and might be eligible for a lot of time in home. Whereas in our system, regardless of your needs, there's a pot of money available. It's exactly the same for everybody, if you're a child or if you're an adult. So it's the same amount of money regardless of your needs. So again, I think you have to take a look at what the situation is. And I think the other thing that people need to understand is we have a lot of people who are enrolled on, not a lot, but there are people enrolled on the PUNS who are not eligible for services. And the reason for that is we can enroll somebody on the PUNS if we have a suspicion that they have an intellectual or developmental disability. So we don't have to do a full eligibility determination. And a lot of people believe that because they're on the PUNS that they're eligible, or believe because they're in special ed that they're eligible. But what we have to do is we have to determine if somebody has an intellectual disability or not. And so here's what we have to, this is the guidelines that we have to follow, the federal guidelines. Somebody is considered to have an intellectual disability if their IQ score is below 70 and it was diagnosed prior to their 18th birthday. If somebody has a related condition, and there's three: autism, cerebral palsy, or a seizure disorder, and their IQ is higher than 70, then they have to have very, very significant deficits in 3 out of 6 life areas that are outlined in the PASS manual, the pre-admission screening manual that we have to follow. And it's in chapter 5 of that manual. And it outlines, I think, in pretty good detail, what's considered to be a deficit in a certain life area versus what's a very substantial deficit. So I think that's difficult sometimes for families and people to understand is just because you have a related condition or just because you've been in special education does not necessarily mean that you're clinically eligible for services in the developmental disabilities waiver. So it's really important for people to understand that and to be diagnosed properly. So if somebody has an autism diagnosis, what the state would really like to see is, when was that diagnosed? Where are the diagnostics that were used? Is this something that really has been part of somebody's life, you know, throughout their childhood? Um, and I think it's a lot better now than it used to be, but there used to be a lot of autism diagnoses floating out there that weren't necessarily true or accurate, but it got put on a piece of paper. So people need to understand that if you have a related condition, but the IQ is below 70 and we have all those documents from before 18, then we don't need to worry about anything. We go then on just a straight up intellectual disability. But the whole point is that the developmental disabilities waiver is intended for people who have an intellectual disability, or for people who, due to this related condition, present as though that they do. Right? So everybody with autism does not belong in the DD waiver, nor does everybody with a seizure disorder, nor does everybody with cerebral palsy. So it has to be somebody who's going to present as though they are an individual with an intellectual disability. Otherwise, they'd be terribly misserved. It just, it wouldn't fit the bill. If we go through the whole process and we find that the person's not eligible, or we believe that they're eligible and we submit for funding through the division, and they find them not eligible, there's an appeal process that we can go through. So it's not all over and done with, but that is something that comes up sometimes, and people need to be aware of it, especially when we're dealing with, somebody with that higher IQ.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So you mentioned the PASS manual. Is that
Mhm.
something that would be useful to families? Is that on the DHS site?
It's on the DHS website, and just if you put in the search bar PASS, all caps, PAS manual, it comes up. Most of it's a little bit boring.
Yeah.
It's the forms that we use and that kind of stuff. But I think the chapter 5 is very, very useful. So that's when we get down to, are we finding that this person is eligible or not?
Mhm.
Based on the documents that we have, the clinical documents that we have, and outlines those areas and gives some pretty good examples. And it gives good examples under the categories too, of somebody with autism, somebody with a seizure disorder, somebody with cerebral palsy. So I think that's it's a good guide. It's something really good for families to look at. And when we have gotten to the point of having to outline the deficits, we don't really know these people. You know what I mean? We've enrolled them on the PUNS, and now they're either in a crisis or have been selected, and now we're starting this process. We rely on the people who truly know them. We'll go back to schools and ask more, can you give us more detail about this person? Families obviously know their people, these are their sons and daughters and brothers and sisters. We rely on them to really give us some good insight regarding those deficits and how they're impacting the person to try and make that case to the state.
Okay. And in terms of time frame, we get this question a lot, especially with our older students that are aging out. That still don't have the waiver. How long? What's going to happen next?
Mm.
What are my options? Can you speak a little to that?
So it's kind of hard to say how long. What we try to do, and I don't know, I know that many of the families are probably very familiar with that iPad United Facebook page, which is a statewide page and talks about good things and bad things and a lot of people's frustrations and we hope we're not frustrating people, but it does take a little while because we get all these names at once, so we have nearly 200 new people that we'll be working with starting July 1st. We still have all our old people that we're working with and all this. So what we ask people for is a little bit of patience, but if people can be proactive, have those documents available, already start applying for Medicaid, get the physical, which I know that's difficult. That's harder. You can't get in your doctor's office sometimes for 4, 5, 6 months because they're just so booked out. Or I just had a physical, now I have to wait a year. We need it in a time frame. It needs to be within a year.
Right.
Your doctor or your insurance isn't going to pay for it, so you might have just missed that window. But getting all those things in order would be really helpful. Sometimes we go through a long, long process with Medicaid, with denials. Um, Sometimes we have the people who have the related conditions and the higher IQ, and we spend a long, long time tracking down documents, trying to make a case or getting a diagnosis, getting that autism diagnosis, getting into a psychiatrist and really getting that diagnosed. Um, if everything's in order and we can move along and people know what they want, sometimes we can do this very easily in under 6 months, which sounds like a long time, but it really, really isn't, because that's from our first day meeting with you, gathering your documents, doing our paperwork, figuring out what you want to do. Do you want residential services? Do you want to look at home-based services? Do you want a day program? Families are doing some research and some tours and some visits, and all of that together could take a while. We've had people on the PUNS list whose families haven't made a decision for years. Well, I have doors. I'm not sure which way I want to go. We're not sure we want a special needs trust, so we're still not eligible for Medicaid. Um, so I'd like to say that we could have it over and done with in 6 months to a year and get everybody linked. And sometimes much quicker than that. If everything's ready to go, sometimes we move right along.
So you mentioned families having documents ready, having a current physical. What are the best tips you have for building a great relationship with your caseworker
Mhm.
and really helping that relationship? And what are the best things families can do to kind of help themselves?
I
Because
think what the
caseworkers
families,
are
yeah, they
overwhelmed.
can, yeah, no, and the families are overwhelmed too. So
Yes.
yeah, hopefully that we have a mutually respectful relationship and we understand that we're all trying to do our best. To get the documents, to have them ready, to keep appointments. And then I think the other thing is to know what you want. Some families don't.
Mhm.
Do you want a day program? Are you considering residential? Do you want to, how do you want to proceed? So maybe they should be taking a look at all of that right now and trying to figure out,
Mhm.
let's say they're interested in a day program, but they would like it to be a very specific one. There's nothing wrong with calling them up and saying, hey, I got my PUN selection letter. I know we're not going to start working on this until July, but we really like your day. We'd really like a tour of your day program. I mean, I'm assuming that most parents want to go tour and take a look, and not take some place because it's 3 blocks away versus something that might be, 8 miles away, but is a much better fit. So I would say to take the time to do that research and that due diligence, gather in the documents,
Mhm.
and to all the families, and I'll always tell them this, call me if there's a problem. Um, the staff have a lot of cases, but that should never be an excuse for not providing service to people. And what I've asked them to do especially when we get these giant selections all at once and we're starting to work, and so there's just a very small number of people who do that work and they divvy up that list. Um, and then what I say to them is, look, call the people and get them on your calendar. Even if you call them in July and you've got nothing available until mid-September, that's mutually, it has to work on our side, but it has to work for the family too. Get them on your calendar, have that discussion so that we can be a little proactive and get rolling and they can get to work on a few things before you get there. Then the other thing is, we might have everything might be just perfect, but based on the past manual rules, we might need a new psychological evaluation.
We run
So
into that a lot.
we will do that evaluation. We'll pay for that evaluation. And I'm gonna pull up the rule for it right now, just so I see. Um, but sometimes that's the other thing. So we're all ready to go, but the psychological is out of date. It doesn't mean that the person's not eligible, but it means that the psychological is out of date. So here's their rule. I'm just pulling it up here. I think I know it, but I don't want to give the wrong answer. If somebody is considered to have a mild intellectual disability, we have to have a psychological that was completed within 5 years prior to the date recorded on the DD Pass 2, which is one of those forms we have to do in the pass manual. So within 5 years. If someone's considered to be moderate, it's the same thing with the 5 years. Or if we have two psychologicals, both prior to the age of 18, then we're okay. If somebody is considered to be severe or profound and we have one psychological prior to 18, no matter how old it is, we can go with that. So we do have a lot of folks who end up in that mild range or who are moderate but don't have another psychological to back them up. So then we have to go to our person. Our person, like I said, we really just do IQ testing. So we're not doing a massive battery of tests. He's a neuropsychologist, the doc that we use, but he does not do that whole battery of tests. He just does the IQ, because what we're doing is saying we have somebody, they're clinically eligible, but we need to support that IQ test. We need to say, yes, it's validated. Yes, this is still true. And I think what people need to keep in mind, because a lot of folks are like, well, my kid is 19 years old or 22 years old. Of course it's accurate. It was done, whatever, 7 years ago. Well, we also have a guy who might be 62 coming in the door, or, we have all kinds of different people that we work with. So this whole pass manual outlines the rules just for the whole DD population that we work with. So regardless of your child's age, it's really the age of the documentation when we look at the psychological evaluation.
Wonderful. Okay. And that is one reason we as a school try to always, districts will do that for us. They test the students, they will send out a psychologist. So we always try to remind our families, remind our teachers, like make sure they're not just doing a records review too many times in a row. Make sure you've got current documents,
Yes.
make sure you hang on to them or
Yes.
send them straight to pass and let your case manager hang on to it,
Yes.
depending
Yes.
to Suburban. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm glad you said hang on to it because we don't run into it as often with younger, I call them kids, adults,
Mhm.
because they're just out of school.
Right.
But, the little time goes by and you
Right.
start cleaning out the file cabinet and the box of stuff from school and you're don't ever throw away your kids' stuff. I mean, I think keep the psychological evaluation, keep the IEP. If you went outside and had a neuropsychological evaluation or a psychological, a psychiatric, any of those kind of documents that carry diagnosis and the findings it's just so helpful to
Yes.
try and get people services. And that's a huge hang up sometimes because we could be sitting here with someone who's clearly eligible, that we've met them and we just know and we've talked to their family. We have not a shred of documentation. So we have to hunt. We hunt through Social Security. We look to see if they ever been in another waiver. What does school have? But I think what do you guys get? Is it 7 years and then you can destroy documents? So that goes by so quickly. So please
Yes.
hold on to your documents.
Yes, yes, we can't encourage that enough. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. You mentioned we talked very briefly about day programs and those
Mhm.
types of things, and a lot of. Can you talk a little bit about Suburban Access sending out packets to day programs and what that looks like, its purpose, when you ask for
Mhm.
Suburban Access to do that as a family?
Mhm. So we're going to send out packets to day programs if we're trying to link people with fund services through the developmental disabilities waiver. If someone's trying to go to a day program for private pay because they don't have the funding, and we have a number of people who do that, if we have any documents and you want us to share them, we're happy to do that, but we generally don't have all of that prior to start, working with people. But the packet would really be a cover letter and then some information, like maybe someone's personal plan or IEP, their psychological evaluation, any type of an assessment that would show what this person is like, what kind of needs they have. And we'll send that out and the day program will take a look at that and see if that's somebody that they think they can serve.
Okay, because what we've noticed is a lot of places before they will even talk with the family, they want to see the packet
They
from you
do.
guys. So,
They do. But what we try to explain is, again, we'll send a packet if we have things to send.
right,
But when somebody's on the PUNS, on the waiting list, what we usually have are, we might have an IEP,
right,
we might have a psychological, but we might not have very much, so, but yes, I agree. The day programs are very picky about that, and I think you got to be pushy with them and say, I'd really just like to come and take a tour. I've checked you out online. I've talked to my neighbor whose kid goes there, whatever, but I really would like to come and walk through there. I think it would help to tell the day program, if you're selected from the PUNS, that your funding is imminent. You're just, now people are going to have this funding starting July 1st. Well, once we determine eligibility and get the award, et cetera. But if people know that, that's great. And they're sort of in the same boat. They don't have too many staff, and they it not that they don't want to give you a tour, but if there's no chance there's going to be funding
right.
and there's no chance you're going to pay privately, it's a lot. Especially when you get to this time of year and kids are starting to get out of school and it's summer's coming and all of a sudden they're calling and like, oh my gosh, we're probably never even going to see this guy again. But I don't speak for the day program, so I don't know. But I've heard the same thing, Gail. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So back to waivers. Difference between if you chose like in-home service, kind of a home-based type funding and wanted to switch to residential, what can you talk a little bit about? Can you make those kind of decisions with your waiver
We
money? What does it look like?
so yes, that's something that has changed over the last 5 or 6 years. It used to be that you had to have another crisis to go up, but what the federal government has said is, oh no, no, you don't, because you're already in the waiver and you should have all of the services of that waiver available to you if you need them. So what we do now for people who are, let's say you're in home-based services and for whatever's going on, so things happen, parents age, people get health issues, there's things happen and things become hard to do. We make a case of not a crisis, but an increased need. So we might say, Gail has been receiving home-based services for the last 6 years. Um, and that, her mother's getting older and it's becoming increasingly more difficult for her to attend to all of her needs. And we sort of outline that. So that can absolutely be done, and that can be done a lot easier than it used to be.
Okay,
Yeah. And the
that's good
same
news
thing
for a lot of
backwards.
people.
We've had people leave residential and go home. There's not, there's not an increased need there. They've decided that they want to go home and utilize home-based services. And of course, for the state, that's a big money saver. So there's no problem there. But we really haven't had an issue transitioning people from home-based to residential by trying to outline an increased need that they have.
Okay, so you are the doorway for all of that. I mean, that's good for families to
For
know.
within developmental
Right.
disabilities, right? Yep.
Okay. Okay. Um, does anybody else have questions? I know I've been kind of just putting what I've got written down here, some stuff from families that have come up recently. Um, does anybody have any?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, can you talk about how people are selected from the list? What criteria is used?
Okay. So that again has evolved over time since they did the first selection in 2012. And then it was kind of like truly random, like picture that big thing that they turn the bingo balls in and they just reach in and grab it. It was sort of like that. And they made a determination of a certain number were selected out of each ISC service area. They tried to make it legitimate. So if you had a giant service area, you had more people selected than, let's say, somewhere downstate. And then what they did is said that's not the fairest way of doing things because some guy might have been on the waiting list for the last, 15 years and he keeps getting bypassed. So what they've done now is and for many, many years now, is they've taken a look, and this is the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to look at how long you have been on the list. They're trying to get all of those long timers off so that when they do selections, they truly are going to pick people who have only been on for 4 or 5 years. And we've seen that in our last several selections, that most of the people are either just out of school or almost out of school. Our first, let's say, 5 years or so, lots and lots of people in their 40s and 50s, not as many school kids. So, what they're trying to do now, like I say, is if you're in seeking, that's real important. And I tell the staff here, don't even, tell the parents to put them in seeking to begin with so they don't have to worry about jumping in and out of a category. Enroll in seeking, stay in seeking. But the clock, as far as a pun selection, starts ticking on your 18th birthday when you're in seeking. So that's really, really important that people are in seeking on on the 18th birthday, and then it should be no more than 4 to 5 years, and then they're selected. And of course weighted, like I said, so that the larger areas, CAU, service, CSO, suburban access, we're the biggest as far as numbers, just because we're in the metro area. We're not down in whatever that is, way downstate. Yeah, Carbondale, way the heck down there. So, but it's supposed to be fair. It's fairly fair, I think. Um, I think it's as fair as the state has, I think, really tried their best to make this a fair process for families.
So in terms of seeking, that's something you can just choose, other than proving that there is a disability. You can
Right.
put yourself in
You can just put
seeking.
yourself in seeking. So there used to be like 5, 6 categories, and they narrowed it down. It's just you're just either planning or you're seeking. I think planning is silly. No one's ever going to get selected off of planning. What you might as well go into seeking and give yourself a shot. And that's the same for children. I try to tell families that for their children. We can enroll kids who are as young as 2.5 years old. There's no residential for those kids. They are not generally in a crisis. Um, and they're probably not going to be selected, but they've done 2 children's selections in the last few years. There is not one planned for this year, but those kids were also in seeking. So I would say if you're enrolling in PUNS, go into seeking, stay there, then all you need to remember is to update annually. And we pull a list off of the website too that tells us people who are overdue for their PUNS updates, and then we reach out to them. But people can call us and make sure, just get updated annually. You'll be on that list, and you'll likely be selected between 4 to 5 years after your 18th birthday.
When you are, sorry, I have a question. When you are like seeking and and maybe like a crisis comes up, are you
Yeah,
able to
then give us a call. You don't have to wait. Ever.
Okay.
If a crisis comes up, whether you're on the PUNS list or not, just call us.
Okay.
Now, again, like I
And the
said
crisis is
earlier,
the federal state classifications of abuse, neglect, the homeless, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's not what you and I think is a crisis in our family and in our home. It's what the state thinks is a crisis, but people do not, if people believe that they're in a crisis, they should call us. And we will help, we'll at least determine if we can push forward through the DD waiver for services, or try to give some resources, or try to explain why they unfortunately don't meet the crisis criteria, just so they have an understanding, but we'll try.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions? Up there, watching the chat. Not been much chat. Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh, Patty, thank you so much for coming today.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much, always, for all the years of knowledge.
Yeah, no, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Anytime, honestly. I liked it better when we were there live and in person.
I know you've done those here too. Yep.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much, everybody, for coming today. And we will send the recording out, and we will update you with our next month's, I know we keep sending the list out, but we'll send it again. So thank you all for being here. Thank you,
Okay.
Patty.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.